I love to cook at home. Having good kitchenware makes all the difference in the world. Not only does good equipment make prep and cooking easier, but it makes it more enjoyable. That's why I'm a huge fan of Made In Cookware. Their wide range of products are designed to be professional quality, but for you right in your home. I have over a dozen pieces from Made In, including pots, pans, a pizza steel, knives, and even beer glasses. Yeah, they have glassware too. They have it all. Take your home cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein. Find out why pros like Sean Brock, Nancy Silverton, and Eric Repair trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein, that's MADEIN, and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour, more like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and we're doing this live-ish. With me, as always, I don't know. I don't fucking know. Fuck it. With me, as always, is Kevin Abbott and Tim Johnson. I don't have anything witty to add into their introductions this episode.
If you keep all that in, it will be amazing because every single listener will know the exact point in which you lost your mind. It was right then.
I'm fairly certain that was back when the episode count was still in the double digits.
I think you were hanging on by one single synapsis of your brain, and it just snapped and popped and crackled. Any cereal, really, in the middle of that open, and you just left it in, which I love. I mean, it just goes to show you that not only you, but none of us really give a shit.
My brain is grape nuts right now, Kevin. So, Tim, do you have any cereal related jargon?
No, but
is there a Minnesota town named after a cereal that you can give us a good 10 minutes about?
Well, I mean, we that fair. But we are home to General Mills, right? And Post Consumer Brands is up here, and Malt-O-Meal. And if you drive down to Northfield, it smells like Malt-O-Meal, and it's delightful.
Kevin, do you know what Malt-O-Meal is?
I have no idea.
Neither do I.
Okay, well, anyway, it smells like cinnamon. But you guys know what General Mills is, and you know what Post Consumer Brands is, so there.
I've never heard it called Post Consumer Brands. I've just always known it as Post.
Oh, well, sorry, Post.
But
yeah.
I feel like Kellogg's was formed in like Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yes.
So is there like not only like a Michigan versus like Minnesota like fight in like baseball and stuff, but also in cereals?
We get so concerned with like Iowa and Wisconsin here that we don't really seem to care about Michigan. I mean, Michigan fights with Michigan.
Worse.
The hand and the UP don't even acknowledge each other as the same state. So
oh no, that's Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't understand why it's not.
And like, what wasn't Kellogg's like formed on like cornflakes was it for inmates or
no? It was to stop people from masturbating.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's not kidding.
I heard an episode of a podcast about it before, and I just couldn't remember. It was some like really crazy thing.
Yeah, he started a sanitarium.
That's right. Yeah. Sanitarium.
Yeah.
There was a movie like 30 years ago. A goal. I don't know where that accent just came from. But there was a movie about 30 years ago called The Road to Wellsville that was loosely based. I don't even know if that was directly based or they acknowledged it, but it was loosely based off of that whole idea of this. I mean, it was food to calm the fires of the heart and the loins. And it was the blandest thing he could think of. And there you go.
You're the only other person I've ever talked to in my entire life that has watched that movie.
I know of that movie.
And yet we found each other.
Yeah, I know. I actually kind of even enjoyed that movie. I think it was probably a little bit. I think it was a little bit ahead of its time. I think people didn't get, like, if you did that now, as people have watched, gotten used to Wes Anderson films or things like Documentary Now or things like that. I think they would get it a lot more. But back then, I think it was a type of humor people didn't quite understand. Also, I was probably like 13 and just thought all that stuff was ridiculous.
Yeah, 1994. That's what a cast in that too.
1994. Okay,
Matthew
so
Broderick,
15, yeah.
Anthony Hopkins, right?
John Cusack, Dana Carvey, Bridget Fonda. Like, it's a pretty star-studded cast, if you ask me.
I think the original reason that I wanted to watch it was because Dana Carvey was in there, and I was such a big Dana Carvey fan. But then I really, came to appreciate everyone else in there as well. But yeah.
And because you were 13, you're like, "Where's Garth? I thought he was going to be here." Where's massive head wound Harry? I thought that this was mostly going to be about his SNL characters.
All right, so let's do the thing that people actually, I guess, tune in to the show to talk about.
That's why he makes the big bucks, guys. He gets us back on track.
Eric Hill, do you tune in for beverage talk or for crosstalk and jargon? That's it. He's the only person who listens to the show, right?
I was gonna say, and you know what his answer is going to be.
If he responds in real time, considering this is taped.
Oh, just got a text from him. He said yes.
That's eerie.
Kevin, what are you drinking? As I ask you while it's up to your face.
So I have a Crowler here. This is a beer that we did not package. It's Neon Skyline, Ralph's latest IPA. It's a West Coast style IPA. We actually originally did it as a collaboration beer with the Tank, but this is a beer that we decided to re-release it ourselves, and it's just in draft only at the tap room. It's really nice. It's got I'm just drinking West Coast IPAs hand over fist, and as much as I still enjoy the hazy IPAs, and especially more like the hybrid, which I would call like hazy IPAs that actually have some bitterness to it, this is something I'm really digging. So yeah, that's what I'm drinking right now.
I saw what's his name, Doug from Revolution, posted something about like how we all used to like search out for Nelson and from Alpine back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Like how Alpine now part of, is it Tilray, the company that owns Sweetwater and Green Flash and bought all those brands from AB.
The
Canadian company.
The Canadian one, 10 Barrel and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But fuck, Nelson was such a good beer. I think it's still available on the market, but I haven't seen it in a long ass time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't know if some of these beers you can actually buy online through whatever,
Untapped
or whatever. Some states people can actually distribute. We can't here in Florida, but that's a great brand that I could seek out for Old Favorite Friday.
You're welcome, Kevin.
Tim, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Saga IPA, but I think there's a diacritic over the A, and I know it's Norse, and I know that she's a Norse goddess. But I'm pretty sure it's still Saga. I don't know etymologically if they're related, but I think the word saga, like as an epic movie or whatever, is also Norse. So anyway, it's Saga IPA. They have a series of IPAs all kind of under the Saga. They've got Saga Hazy, and Double Saga.
You didn't say what the brewery was.
Sorry, by Summit.
Okay.
Summit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been kind of a good resurgence to me until they branched out into the other ones, and then they just did this. It was like my favorite new beer of like the last 3 years or whatever. I have appreciated that there's been a little bit of a resurgence of West Coast IPAs. I feel like they all but went away, and over the last couple of years, people have been like, "Oh shit, remember those things? We missed those. Let's bring those back." And so this has been one of my favorite West Coast IPAs. I don't even know. They don't call it West Coast, but it's just not. It's what you're looking for: bitter and clean and all of those things. But yeah, I've been digging it. It's been kind of one of my jams within the last couple of years. Where if I see it on tap, I know I'm going with it.
Nice. Summit was down here for like a hot minute, like 6-7 years ago. But I feel like they were just lost in a sea of beer down here, and if they are still down here, I wouldn't know it. But I remember them being like a consistent brand. Like they were at the time like one of those big breweries, but it was just there was just so much stuff opening up down here itself, and larger regional brands coming in that they got kind of shafted by probably not having a they're not a distributor. They obviously had that, but not having a sales rep who really pushed them down here. So they just got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a top 50. When the Brewers Association put that out, they're still up there. I know their production numbers are down.
I mean,
but
whose isn't basically.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But no, they're still putting out some really fantastic stuff. They're one of the few that I know I can find on their shelf, and when I do find it on the shelf, it is probably going to be good.
Yeah, when I search Total Wine, they don't pop up for the locations around here. So
yeah, I think I remember them saying a little while back that they were maybe
scaling back on distro.
Scaling back a little bit on distro. They'd rather get good beer fresh out the places that it sells.
I'm having a cider, Kingston Black from my friends at Plowman Ciders in Pennsylvania. It is a single varietal apple, and it is barrel aged, 8.5%. So it is a big boy. And this is I've had Plowman ciders on the show for years now. I love their stuff. Almost everything is always very dry, really easy drinking, and the barrel aged varietals that they come out with are so nice. You just get these little oaky vanilla notes in with beautiful apple. So I love this. And also have a little rum. That was my thing on the last one. So
continuing your thing. That's good.
Continue. I'm starting a thing, I guess. So for today's episode, we wanted to talk a little bit about I don't know what the right way of framing this is, but
try words.
Okay. Apple, banana, cucumber. Okay. In an actual formation of a sentence. Okay, gotcha.
That was the next step.
So there's this article that Tim sent us that outlines Bart Watson, the chief economist for the Brewers Association's annual report of the state of craft brewing that he presented at the Craft Brewers Conference in Las Vegas a month or so ago.
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago, actually. Yeah.
Okay. And he breaks down numbers such as like the amount of breweries that are open, openings, closings, kind of barrelage stuff, and a lot of his talks, usually even in the face of what we've been seeing lately, tend to be a kind of positive. And this one, there was really no way around it, I guess, in the fact that the beginning of 2024 has so far tracked, at least as of the time of when he presented this, was tracking more closings of breweries than openings for practically the first time in craft beer history. This is not probably surprising, especially if you were a big listener to us, and we can be very doom and gloom on this show, and we can be very pessimistic, if you will, towards certain aspects of the industry and just the current state of it. So let me start with just some reactions to this. Kevin, what was your reaction from reading that there is more closings in the first quarter plus of 2024 than there are openings?
Maybe I don't have my finger on the pulse. And by maybe, I mean, I certainly don't have my finger on the pulse of the industry the way Mike, I mean, you keep up with the news much, much better than I do. But I'm surprised that this is news. I would have thought that last year we would have had more closings than openings, or maybe by the last quarter of last year we would have been in that situation. I don't know if they break it down by quarters at all, but I mean, not surprised at all. I did look through that article, and I believe there was a graph somewhere in there, and I was looking at it on my phone, so I didn't get a good look at the actual numbers, but it was dramatically more closings and openings, I believe, in the graph that I looked at. And those numbers can be off depending on the scale of it, right? I mean, 20 could look like 20,000 depending on what the actual scale of the graph is. But that part of it might have been a little bit surprising to me. But the overall trend and what we're seeing in Florida, it certainly seems that way. I keep hearing over and over again about 2 or 3 other breweries that are gonna close here any minute now at the same time, and I'm not my old saying, and I've used it here 10,000 times, maybe this will be the last time because obviously the trend is changing, but walk into a craft beer bar, throw a rock, whoever you hit is opening a brewery tomorrow. That was just the way it was for the last 10, 15 years, and I'm not seeing it as much. When I wander through the tasting room while people are there by mistake, because it's always by mistake, because I don't want to talk to people. That's insane. When I do that on occasion, I'm not getting stopped and told about people's home brews as much anymore, and I'm not getting stopped and saying, "Oh, did you hear that we have a bid in on a place?" like I used to. So the anecdotal evidence is all going in the one direction, and it's not that surprising that the actual evidence is falling in line with that.
I like how Kevin is like, I accidentally found myself in the tasting room, so I gotta try to figure out a way to make that work. I guess I'll have a beer. It just reminded me of like Mitch Hedberg. I find myself at the top of like a slide, and I at a playground, or I'm butchering his fucking joke, but like then I gotta pretend like I don't know how I got there. Uh,
We
but you're absolutely right, Kevin, about that. It did seem like there. I can think of at least 5 people off the top of my head who I remember running into at beer bars who were like, "I'm opening up a brewery. I'm about to sign a lease on a place," and I don't know if it ever happened or not. But there was probably like 3-4 months ago. I was on what's that real estate, the commercial real estate Loop, and just looking brewery, South Florida, and it's like a number of brewery locations listed there, and they're of course they don't have disclosure of like the exacts of to who they are and whatnot, but it's like you okay, you have a town here. All right. Square footage. All right. I can figure out who this is. And it's like, all right, this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. And it's like reason for selling. Owner's disinterest, or owner wants to leave the industry. And it's yeah, like, and from ones that you're like, oh, I thought you were seemingly doing okay, but
So I want to ask Tim really quickly what his interpretation of this was, or if he was surprised. But before that, because Mike, you just said that, I want to just tell you that in the last month and a half, I've gotten 3 letters from attorneys asking if I want to bid on a local brewery that's for sale. Now, obviously, no disclosure, no information, just general information like you are talking about. And we haven't engaged in it because it would be dishonest for us because we have no interest in buying any more breweries. But 3. So that's not nothing. Tim.
So I want to clarify that chart. That was not comparing 2024 to 2023. That was comparing 2023 to 2022.
I can't even see the chart because it's not clickable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, the idea of what that was showing was
zoom in on it.
What that was showing was because in 2023 there were still more openings and closings, but it was a really narrow gap. Like they were roughly the same.
Oh, okay.
And in 2022 it was significantly more difference, and so we're already seeing that get to a point where it's even. And now in 2024 they didn't have a chart for that data yet, but now it's already past that tipping point.
Thanks for that clarification.
But for me, it doesn't surprise me. We've definitely seen a lot more closings here in Minnesota. I think some of that is not due to external factors so much as just a culling of the herd, right? You talk about the home brewers that are opening up their we're still outpacing. We're doing better than restaurant closings on that rate. I've just been impressed. So I was having a conversation with my friend just the other day who's in brewing about that there's still a number of openings happening in Minnesota. Like if you go on Beer Advocate, there's a whole thread of openings and closings, and there's still a lot more openings. And I, talking with a friend who's been in the industry forever, and I was like, what kind of fucking idiot even wants to open up a brewery in this climate? Like that just seems like a dumb idea.
I just think that to do it right now, like the stars have to align ever so precisely, like that you own a building, you get you inherit a building that's perfect and happen to have a whole lot of money for the overhead on that initial startup.
Yeah, like what kind of bank is even giving out financing for this stuff?
Yeah.
Which
so fucking reminds me of years ago, the original owner of Modern Times talking about like expansion and like banks are just giving out loans. You should just be going to banks and getting the money to expand. And what happened to them? They went bankrupt, and Maui Brewing bought them for pennies on the dollar. And
if banks are giving out loans, interest rates are shit right now.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole idea just seems insane. So when I hear about it now, what I'm finding is that the ones that are opening, they're all out in the exurbs and the exurbs and the small towns and things like that. You're not seeing this boom of Dangerous Man closed down their Minneapolis and nothing. They're not getting replaced by a brewery.
What's exurb? Is that like way out suburbs?
Exurb is like a suburb of a suburb. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not heard that term rural. Before? No.
Okay. It's a thing. Look it up.
I don't doubt it. I just wanted to clarify.
I don't know. Sometimes I use words,
Mike.
Sometimes I use words, and you're like, I've never heard that word before, and I'm like, it feels like it's just in. I mean,
the other day, you said the word "we," and I was like, what is that? We?
Fight.
But yeah, I mean, I think it does not surprise me. Part of me has been like, frankly, I don't say what's taken so long in that, like, I'm rooting for this, because I'm not rooting for this, but more like I guess I would have thought it would have happened even a little bit sooner. I think a lot of things that happened during the pandemic that helped stave off some things kicked the can down the road a little bit further. But I also think we're just going to see even more of this, because it's not just the residual of the pandemic, and it's not just the change in consumer drinking behavior. and it's not just the competition from different markets. It's this perfect confluence of all of those things at once.
That's really I what I take out of this article is that there is just a perfect storm of stuff going on that is kind of stacked against breweries. It's supply chain, it's consumers changes in taste, it's influx of new exciting products such as like THC stuff. It is pricing. It is the age groups. It's so many different things, and you have to you have to keep your head on a swivel with this type of stuff to keep up with all of it. And for a small brewery who probably doesn't have a marketing team, let alone maybe a single person, and the brewer is also the owner who's dealing a lot with sales, who's dealing with tap room, who's dealing with so many other things, doesn't have the time or even will a lot of times to keep up with this type of stuff that is going on out there that you basically need to in order to stay in business at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen enough breweries that have already decided to like pull out of distro. Some of them are pulling out of cans. Some of them are pulling out of distro entirely. They're not even distributing kegs. And
I would consider pulling out of draft over package, depending on my size and my output, because there's really not a whole lot of growth in kegs.
No, but at least there's margin.
The margin.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no freaking margin in cans. I remember. I mean, this was pre-pandemic. I remember at Badger Hill, we were going to contract for someone, and we were working out pricing on cans. And they said, "So how do you make money on these things?" And we just laughed and we said, "You don't. This is not a direct money maker. It's another way to get your hand in the product consumer and hope that it gets you more draft accounts and gets you more customers and things like that." It wasn't a loss leader, but it was damn near close to that, and that was pre-pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything has gone up in price, and I hear these people bitching about $7-8 pints, and I'm like, but COGS has gone up way more than that.
Yeah,
the margins have only shrunk on so many of these things. So yeah, you can get annoyed that you have to pay $1 more a pint, but it's costing us $2 more a pint to make it for you. And so, all of those factors that are going into it, like I get why people are pulling out. It's just, if you had that, it kind of feels like a harbinger of doom in some ways. I don't know. I mean, we've also seen a few breweries around here that are going back to like Kickstarters, and not new breweries. Crowdsourcing. They're not Kickstarter, but yeah. People that have gone to, hey, we brands that have been around for like 10 years have been doing crowdsourcing, and and they're not getting any love because people are like, what? No, they're not excited about it like they were 10 years ago. And so none of these things are getting funded to their thing. But yeah, that's literally what we're even seeing on that.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting, and I did read the article, I did read through it rather quickly, and I think that everything that Tim and what's your name again? Mike, you talked about there were covered. I think you covered a lot of those reasons, that perfect storm, as you said, Mike, of all the things that have the confluence of things that have gotten us to this point. But one of the things that I may have been touched on, or we may have touched on before in episodes, is that craft beer used to be cool. It used to be the thing that was a little bit counterculture. You're sticking it to the man. You're not buying a Budweiser like that old guy down the street who doesn't care about what he's drinking. It was about local. It was about a dude with a beard and like leather overalls. And like that was like yeah, we're a counterculture and we're cool. And A lot of that's gone away. There's not the cool factor, the ordering. I mean, there was all those Budweiser commercials or Miller Lite. I don't know what they were, but making fun of craft beer people, asking about the ingredients or does this have hints of rosemary? I know I'm just making shit up, but there was that kind of pushback to it. So there was always kind of a pretentious, douchey atmosphere around craft beer too. It's a yin and yang kind of thing. But there definitely was this thing as this is cutting edge, this is cool, this is local. And I feel like a lot of that has gone away. We still have the locals that love us. I mean, that will die for us and will talk about everything we do and comment on every post and come to every release. We have those people. I don't think we're making a lot of new ones. I bet most breweries are in my exact boat. And I don't think we have that kind of cool hip factor that we did. And just by the fact that I said hip in there tells you why I'm old. And there's no reason to think I'm either cool or hip or fly, by the way.
Oh, good Lord. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I was reading another article the other day about how flights have become less common at breweries. And kind of the general conceit of the article was that because that's what your dad used to do, right? So craft beer, I mean, look at us. We're 3 now aging dads. Like craft beer became what your dad does. And when you're 20, you don't want to do what your dad does, right? Craft beer has become the New Balance sneaker of drinking in a lot of ways.
Like
that's good. That should be the title of the episode.
Someone write that down.
Yeah, but I mean,
remind me after this. It's absolutely true. I wrote something at some point last year where I basically said that if the me who got into craft beer were to meet the me today and talk about beer, that me would have slapped the current me because I'd be a fucking sellout. I'd be a fucking poser, like be fucking bullshit. And it's kind of sad because I still want to look at beer in that way. Like one of the things about craft beer that really drew me in was this almost punk rock ethos to it. Very DIY, small. We don't need the fucking man. We can fucking get all our shit in a van and drive across the fucking country, and that's fucking that, man.
We're not bad brains. We're Steely Dan.
It's fucking sad because I feel like we didn't even really fucking sell out because we had fucking Sex Pistols breweries created that were built with a lot of money, created big to start off with the idea of let's fucking distribute far and wide, and like that shit fucking diluted this shit. And there are still some really awesome small breweries that are trying hard, who I fucking adore, that are keeping some of that ethos going, and I miss that because like there's not a whole lot of that down here. It pisses me off. I had this conversation with someone today that like there's so much fucking marketing of beer and creation of beer towards fucking Florida stereotypical bullshit. Palm trees and fucking fish and fucking turtles and blah, blah, blah. Like, and hearing people who are fucking veterans in this industry and be like, it's what sells, man. Like, does it? But does it? Like, because there's far more people who don't give a shit about any of that down here, who don't care about golf, who don't care about boating and sailing and fishing and the beach than there are that do. And it's like we fucking ignore those people who are just normal, everyday, or even counter to that, want to be counter to that, to just try to appeal to a wide swatch, but it might not even be the right swatch. That whole thing just pissed me off, and I just went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Joel reposted on Instagram today a reel.
A rhino shitting.
Well, no,
he posts that one a lot.
I was gonna say he posts that one a lot. No, it was about someone saying about like the world wasn't asking for Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix gave it to him.
Oh yeah, it was Liam Gallagher or Noel Gallagher talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, it reminded me of the whole thing of like, what made Steve Jobs good is that he didn't ask the consumer what he want. He told the consumer what they want, right? And I feel like craft beer used to get into that, right? People weren't asking. I remember when Surly Furious came out in the city and it rocked the city to its core in a good way. People weren't asking for that beer. Surly came out and said, "Here, you want this beer? Give this thing a try." And that kind of was what started craft beer in so many ways, was breweries being at the forefront rather than chasing trends, if I can speak. Or it's kind of along that same line. You're right. Like, I get the whole that's what sells, because I think we've been burned too many times on things that don't sell.
But I think I'm sorry. I'm trying to cut you off, and I feel like I cut you off in mid thought. Did you want to?
No, I think we became so afraid of things that didn't sell that we got overly concerned what did sell, and we lost that telling the consumer what they want type of mentality.
I think one of the main things when it comes to this marketing side of it and looking at the Florida centric palm trees and what have you, is that, and even thinking about Jimi Hendrix and whatnot, the market is so saturated that somebody who's doing something unique does not have any voice. They have no outlet that's going to allow them to grow up and actually make money and support themselves and support their employees and grow the business. It's very hard to get a foothold doing something unique and special. And this is coming from someone who has a owning interest in a brewery that legitimately makes some of the best beer in the world by the measures of medals and GABF and World Beer Cup in their style. But Odd Breed is not turning them away at the door because Matt Manthy's a rock star who does everything perfectly and gets wide-ranging critical acclaim. Taking the music metaphor, how many of those musicians that were avant-garde, the Residents or whoever it was, that found a little niche but might not have been able to get to the point where they were, wildly successful like they wanted to be, or even people that were able to make a living. And I think that you have to take the good with the bad there. When you're a brewery and you have to make money and you have to keep the lights on and you don't have 3 years worth of operating capital, and the market is so saturated and you are fighting for every dollar, and there's a guy down the street doing a cheap IPA and there's some turtles on it. And by the way, Mike, I'm with you. Fuck those turtles. Everyone cares about those turtles, and I'm glad you finally put a smackdown on those bitches and said we care too much about the turtles. Mike, your rabbit says fuck turtles, and I'm with you. But you go
figuratively there. I'm saying fuck them, not don't actually go fornicate with turtles.
Thank you for clarifying that, because people would have gone a totally different way with that. But I'm just saying we are so saturated, and the breweries that led the way and they told you what to drink, they were the Steve Jobs, as you said. How can they stand out? How can they get anyone to walk into their door these days when there's 37 breweries in their neighborhood and all of them have bright lights and fancy things going on?
But how do you stand out when you're a cover band?
So I see both sides here, because Kevin's biggest point, I think, in that whole thing, I completely agree with him, is that when the markets become saturated, it makes it a lot more difficult to stand out from the crowd, even if you are purposefully doing something different. When Surly was getting started, you didn't have the market that you had now, so they could be more adventurous and risky in trying to go big with something like that. Hendrix was the same way. I just think that today it should be about scaling expectations and having a pretty good idea as to what kind of growth you expect and where possibly your cap is at, and being happy with getting to that point, as long as financially feasible. Like being a small brewery and being different and being unique and making that be a cornerstone to your business, I think is awesome and still possible, as long as you know that my potential for growth is only so big because of that, and being like, all right, will it make sense for me to only get this big? Yeah. All right, cool. Then let's get there. Let's make some cool beer, and let's make our employees that we have here, the small staff, let's make them happy. Let's make our community happy, and being like that.
Well, and that was one of the things that got touched on in the article briefly, is the idea that so many people had all these growth ideas rather than just being what they are, right? So the article mentioned that there's 51% capacity, which is the lowest it's been in decades. And so everyone has breweries twice the size of what they need to be, because everyone had these ideas of growth and growth and growth. But I think about, like, the breweries I love the best are the ones that never had that strategy, where they just wanted to be the mom and pop, right? They don't want to open up 50 grocery store chains. They just want to be their local grocery store chain, or their local grocery store, their little corner store, that type of thing. And you're seeing that as well, because the other thing that it said was that it seemed like most of the growth is happening on the small end, so all the bigger guys are making less beer, but the they're making, like, in Minnesota, Surly and Summit and Dean and Fulton. Well, maybe not Dean, but a lot of these breweries, their production numbers are down. But the Minnesota market isn't down that much, right? And so it's all these little guys that are just saying, hey, maybe I don't need to have a 20-barrel system or a 40-barrel system or a 300-barrel system. Maybe I'm just going to serve my community with this 5-barrel system, and maybe that's all I'm ever going to be, and I'm not going to get into distro. And I think that, it's a switch in the minds, because when everyone was doing this during craft beer's heyday, they were also sizing up to grow, but growth isn't the only thing that keeps you along. If you can keep your lights on and pay your bills, maybe that's all you need to do.
Here's a great, I feel like, example of this, and it comes courtesy of you, Tim. When you were visiting some of your family a week or two ago, and you, I guess, coming back, you went to go visit a bar and grill that's the creators of the Juicy Lucy hamburger. For those who don't know, it's a patty or two patties that's kind of formed with cheese in the middle so that it melts in the middle when you bite into it. I'm explaining that kind of right, I think.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And you went in there, you sent me some pictures, and you were like, this place is still kind of stuck in where it used to be. It still doesn't take credit cards. It has PBR and Leinenkugels, and is just everything that it is supposed to be. And there's something to be said about a place like that still exists. Like, they knew what their expectations were. They knew what they wanted to be. They didn't want to be anything more than that. They probably had so much opportunity to franchise or create something bigger, and they chose not to. And
yeah,
I think that's more breweries needed to do something like that.
Yeah, they could have opened up a second Matt's. I don't know. This is a place, when I talk about it, it's iconic. Like, Barack Obama ate here. It's not like it's just like this casual little thing. It's like, it's the home of the quintessential. I mean, things I see a lot in New Orleans. A lot of bars and restaurants in New Orleans that have been around for 100 years have never once thought about opening a second location. That's something that's kind of unique about that, is that city has kind of an old world charm, and Minnesota is just the home of so many things like Target and 3M and General Mills and
brag.
And oh yeah, I know we actually happen to have things that are successful. Who knew? But like what I've always said, it's because it's funny because like Crispin was a local company when they sold to Miller at the time. People were like, "Oh man, they're sellouts." And I'm like, "But man, if you sold your patented for silent Velcro to 3M, no one would call you a sellout. They'd say you local boy does good, right?" But now it is kind of the opposite, right? It is like that, we're going to be successful and we're going to be busy because we're popular and we're the best at what we're going to do, but that doesn't mean that we have to open up a second location. That doesn't mean we have to expand hours. That doesn't mean we have to make our menu bigger, Like I get jealous of some of these breweries that are like, we make 2 beers. That's it. But we make the most kick-ass 2 beers ever. So come on in.
Well, I think a lot of this comes down to the youth of the craft beer community. The 2 youths of the craft beer community, compared to wine, compared to spirits in the US, because wine sees ups and downs all the time. I'm not privy to any of the information on wine. Maybe that's way down, and there's some economist that's talking about in the local wine
Kevin's
consortium.
been blackballed from all wine statistics.
Yeah, they don't let me. I left the wine industry, and then I've been excommunicated. They won't talk to me anymore. I've been shunned essentially. But I don't know what those numbers look like. I know that they go up and down just like beer numbers do, but they have got to a point where the industry grew up where it wasn't necessarily cool to drink wine, but it was something that was a status symbol, or we've talked about it before. It was not the affordable luxury. It was a luxury. We are still in such an infancy with craft beer as opposed to the beer industry in general and other spirits that I think we're in kind of the growing pain stages. We're in like teenage years where we need to graduate to more responsibility and everything you guys were just talking about of what you want to be. Oh, so I'm not going to just come in as I'm a former lawyer and I had a bunch of money and I'm going to make a brewery and I'm going to sell to Budweiser in 5 years. That those people are filtering out because they're not seeing the returns. The people have gotten burned on it. And looking at things like packaging and distro, I look at this more closely with restaurants in the fact that a brewery that gets into the business and they're a brew pub and they're just selling their beer on site, and a restaurant that is a small craft kitchen and them opening their second location. Well, the opening the second location for a brewery is not necessarily another tap room, it's distro, because it's a completely different business. It might as well be opening a second business. And looking at it this way, how many of those local scratch kitchens are wildly successful when they open their second location? Not very many. So we need to be looking at ourselves in kind of critiquing the industry by those different lenses of other spirits, other alcohol products, looking at the cool factor of it, looking at what other industries like restaurants, which are trying to get people in to drink on site constantly. Jack Daniels is not putting up, local bars all over the country, right? Beer is unique in that way, where, we're a tap room and a distribution, hub or what have you. So I think this is the natural. I think 15, 20 years from now, anyone with any foresight and understanding is going to go like, yeah, of course they went through that. How could they not have? This wasn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
They settled into exactly what they were going to be. And the people that didn't get overextended and understood what this was in the first place got it, and they did okay. And now we still have a healthy craft beer industry picking out crazy new styles, hopefully making IPAs that actually have, that are IPAs, and hopefully making like good beer. But, this is a thing. It's going to be a watershed moment.
And I want to reiterate that we have basically collectively said that many times on this show, is that there's going to be plenty of breweries that survive through all of this when they figure out what it is that they need to do correctly. The ones who are, I almost said smaller ones, but that's not true. The ones who are poorly managed and are just fucking out of control are going to go away. They're going to close, they're going to sell, they're going to liquidate, they're going to do all of those things, and things are going to level off. It's going to be all right for people who are beer fans. It's going to be all right for breweries who are sensible and have good business strategy. Even if you have come down off of a high from 2017, 2018, and all of that, the ones with good business sense, even if they're down, are going to level off and probably start going back up again at some point once all of this dust settles. Like, I want that to be perfectly clear, because I think that that's going to happen, and I hope for that, because I do very much care about this industry, and I very much want good people who make good beverage to keep on staying open, because I want to drink your beverage and I want to come visit your establishment. And even at 41 and going on to whatever age, like, this is kind of built into my DNA for what it's worth. So yeah.
I wanted to ask a question of you guys, and this was kind of part of an earlier thing that I got off on a tangent on, which is, I know, shocking, but I talked about how we lost cool. And then I was trying to think, who took up that mantle? I understand that White Claw is like 21-year-old college cool.
I don't even think it is anymore. I think it's already losing it.
I'm sorry, at one point, but I'm just giving you like that seltzers, right? And RTDs are, I believe, kind of fill that space in some way, shape, or form. What's taken up that mantle? Because I don't know what's that next like hip thing. And once again, using that really with it term to describe something that's like people are interested in, but what's taken up that mantle and replace craft beer in that space? It's nothing in the public's cooler. I know I go back to this all the time because that's what I'm thinking about obsessively, and that's where I'm selling to. But I walked that cooler and I'm like, what is anyone really identifying with in here? What is the person that says, I'm the kind of person that only drinks craft beer 5 years ago? What are they pulling out of that cooler? Or are they just abandoning the market altogether?
They're not in that cooler.
Yeah.
They're not drinking, or they're moving on to that THC cooler, or they've found some other identity. Like, craft beer isn't an identity. Like, we talked about this before. Homebrew shops are closing all over the place. There's not like we are the home of Midwest Supply and Northern Brewer, and they have closed down all of their locations around here. So large that Budweiser bought them. The largest homebrew shop in the country, and all those locations have closed down. I just don't think craft beer is an identity anymore, and I don't think that drinking is an identity. I don't think people identify with brands in general anymore. I think a lot of studies have shown that like brand loyalty is down. It used to be like, NASCAR fans were the most brand loyal. I use Tide because my driver drives a Tide car, type of thing. I think, brands change so much. I mean, when we were kids, Reebok and Fila were a thing. When was the last time you saw anyone wear a pair of Filas or Reeboks?
I hear you. I feel like the older generation still has brand loyalty to certain things. But this generation is more promiscuous with what they do, and they don't want to. Yeah, I used to. Look at Mike used a big word.
Promiscuous. That was a sexy term.
It's all these brand sluts.
But like I was in Publix on Monday, on Memorial Day, and I had to grab a couple things, and I was just walking by the beer section. I wasn't even looking for anything. I just had to go down towards the dairy, and that they're on the same aisle. And I hear two younger men, probably in their mid-20s, and one of them goes to the other, "So what are you thinking, man? You want some claws or some trues?" And I stopped. I literally stopped because I didn't at first understand what the second part was. I'm like, huh. And then he's talking about truly. And I'm like, oh, that's a slang word that I haven't heard before. Have you, Kevin? You looked at me when I just said that, like,
I got it
of
immediately.
course.
I got it through context more than anything. Claws or some
Well,
trues. I mean, those are the two biggest seltzer brands.
My hearing is fucking terrible. That's what I get for playing in bands and thinking that hearing loss wasn't a thing. But I was just like, what did he say? And then I figured it out through context myself. But man, I don't think that you have some of these brands that are more macro that have some like PBR is always going to have that following along with it to a hipster crowd. But I think that the younger demographic looks at price, what is the cheapest at the time, and bang for their buck. And that is why I think a lot of these high ABV 19.2s and 22-ounce cans and 16-ounce cans stuff like really work for a single serve in C stores and grocery stores now that Publix is doing them single serve.
And they rejected those for a long time.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Publix didn't want 16-ounce cans, period, for a long time, and they started finally carrying them 4 or 5 years ago. But now they're doing the single serve stuff, and it's I think consumers are looking at, and that's, hey, I know we have talked about this ad nauseum on this show. New Belgium has found that market, and you know what? They've gotten me on it from a good, not even saying time to time, a good bit. When I go in there and I'm like, all right, a $3 can of Tropic Force that's 9.5%, I will enjoy this while watching Survivor. Like and be happy for the situation. I think that they are finding that ability for the market. And you know what? Voodoo Ranger as a brand has some loyalty in it. There are people, like, I see them retweeting people all the time who are just fanatics of that brand and will buy every variety pack that they put out, every new thing that they put out. They're very big in the gaming community. Like, gamers love that brand. Like, they're one who I think it has some brand loyalty to them. And even maybe a little bit with Firestone's 805. I don't live in California, so I can't say for sure, but from the outside looking in, it seems like they have something there with that brand. But down here, it's what's cheap and what's going to get it done for the cheapest.
This is the latest installment of things that Mike says as blanket statements and then completely takes it back and gives examples of how that statement is not true. The brand loyalty is dead, except for all these examples of brand loyalty.
That was two examples.
But there's brand loyalty to Funky Buddha. There's brand loyalty to Cigar City. I think there is brand loyalty across the board. I don't think that's
Cigar City's comment section.
I'm talking specifically about the up and coming generation. There's brand loyalty, but again, it's brand loyalty from older people. I don't think you get the brand loyalty from the younger drinkers, and I think that is the challenge.
I think it's some level, just as human beings, there is a certain level of brand loyalty. I think that in general, it might not be what it was 20 years ago. And even if it shifted by 10% in one direction, that's a monumental change. One of the problems we always look at generation to generation is that we think that what has happened before has always been that way and is somehow ordained to happen till the end of time.
Mhm.
And we grew up in a generation where you saw a commercial on Saturday morning cartoons, and you ran and asked your parents to get it. I'm watching how my son deals with brands and the things that he loves. And he's growing up on brand loyalty in a completely different way. It's all YouTube. It's Mr. Beast giving away $10,000 at a pop on people and puppies.
Mhm.
And I don't even know what he watches, but I'm there in the room and I'm trying to engage. But I think it's shifting. And I think that the old way of doing it is absolutely how the craft beer industry is trying to handle things.
Mhm.
And that is where things need to change. And that is where old ways need to die. And we have to look at, I get these calls every now and then. I got one today, the day that we're recording this, of a person that wanted me to spend $25,000 so that I could be on their TV show. Right?
Mhm.
20 or 30 years ago, when advertising was king, they needed content. And if I was good, and I'm not saying I am, but if I was good on camera and a good interview and a good expert, they would have brought me on, and Dow Chemical would have paid the money for that segment. But now they need me to pay money for that segment because advertising has evaporated.
Yeah.
And it's not what it used to be. The ground beneath us is shifting, and we're going off of like early TV. We're going off a 1950s model that has steadily been going downhill ever since. And what that actually means to marketing dollars and what it means for your brand recognition and what have you. And the brands that are, some of them are just lucky and they got in and they've made good beer with good branding and it's latched on, good for them. Other people are shifting to completely different models of marketing. But if you think that you can go on that old school, I'm going to have a Super Bowl ad and I'm going to be successful. How did that work out for Funky Buddha and Seltzer? You know,
Mhm.
it didn't blow them up so that they were now the number one seltzer in South Florida. They got kicked out of the public sets. I mean, and they were a massive brand with huge followings. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, well, and I don't mean like even necessarily any specific brewery's brand, but even just the brand of craft beer itself. There's not even just a loyalty to craft beer anymore, right? When we all got into craft beer, we only drank craft beer.
Yeah.
True.
That's not the case anymore. I think even for us as old guys, it's no longer as much of our identity, but I think definitely the younger generation, they don't define themselves as a craft beer drinker because it's jumped the shark. Again, it's what the old guys do. Those old guys were into the craft beer. I'm into, exploring new things and doing a bunch of different things, and craft beer has become old hat.
Like ayahuasca.
Well, I mean, like, I even like your idea about TV and advertising, right? Like Conan O'Brien talks about this all the time on his podcast about how
Way to promote another podcast on here,
whatever.
Tim. Like
Whatever.
he's giving us money to promote him.
I didn't mention.
We have been at war with Conan for as long as he's had his podcast.
You know how many people who listen to the show who don't know about Conan O'Brien? And now
exactly.
You just introduce them to him.
Sleeper cell put into United We Drink to push.
Jesus Christ!
Sorry, go ahead.
Push the cocoa agenda.
But the idea of being that what used to be a terrible rating number even 15 years ago is now the number one rated show, right? It's dramatically shifted. That market is so dramatically shifted that if you think I'm going to make the best network sitcom of all time, you're not. Because that's not the way people consume network sitcoms unless it's on CBS and you're appealing to my parents. But again, you're not going to be successful appealing to old people. not to be ageist, but that's not the way that's going to work. And that's why those advertising, I mean, like even Super Bowl ads, the spend is way down. They're not spending nearly as much on Super Bowl ads as they used to. People
but it's
just don't care. And so their identity, and so like craft beer is kind of is going through its switch to streaming service, and it hasn't figured that out yet.
That's a great example because listen, everything's always shifting. I mean, the old school. I mean, I know I talked about the 500 songs rock and roll history podcast last time I think on the show.
Oh wait! You promoted another podcast? Huh?
No, not at all. That nice.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But it was all about records, individual records with an A side and a B side. That was the entire industry. Long play albums were all for old people. It was the young generation that changed the dynamic, and then it changed back as the music public graduated. We are in an ever shifting landscape. Anyone who thinks that we can just look at what was done 10 years ago and just do that now has been fooling themselves forever. And we have to change. This report from the craft beer industry shows us that, and it shows us, and it describes what can work, and it's community focused, local, nimble, not relying on trying to make 100,000 people your biggest fan, because that's really, really difficult now. You mentioned the TV ratings. The Good Place was one of my favorite television shows of all time. Yeah, I think it's the greatest television show of all time, personally. I believe their last season was getting like 800,000 viewers. I am going to butcher this, but it's not at that far out of the ballpark. I think the Beverly Hillbillies was doing like 17 million viewers when it was canceled. Like, that's just the way the world changes.
Yeah. I don't know where else to go from there.
And by the way, don't quote me on any of those numbers because they're wrong and I'm wrong. But
you lowball.
It's the spirit of what I said, which is the most important thing to understand, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I remember when I was in grad school, we were in a marketing class, and Blockbuster was still a thing, and people were talking about how Blockbuster can compete with Netflix or Redbox when Netflix was still just doing the DVDs by mail type of thing. And I said they all have it wrong. The future is streaming, and everyone in that marketing class looked at me like I was an idiot. Like, people don't have internet, and the internet can't keep up, and I can't lag. And I'm like, well, yeah, no, not today, guys. But it reminds me of Kodak. Kodak actually was one of the first people to develop a digital camera, but they were told that the future was still film, and so they scrapped that program, and now they're not even a player in digital.
Yeah. They still have one of the most sought after film stocks in film, but
absolutely, but they totally missed out on the digital revolution because they actually were one of the first people to develop it.
I think I have a Kodak
that reminds me
around here somewhere.
Tim, I'm glad you said it. That reminds me of when I was in Chicago and I met this young man. His name was like Barack Obama, something like that. He was a young community organizer. And I said, you should really get into the politics game. And I think you could make a real difference. And I don't know whatever happened to that young man, but I think he did well. He had the right attitude.
Bitch.
I just want to say for Kevin's sake on the Good Place numbers, the last season was the least watched season, but its average viewer rating was 3.56, including DVRs, and its live numbers never went below 1.91.
See, so that's why I should never be fact checked.
But that's why also its first season was an average viewer of 572. So it's like 30% off. So
yeah.
All right. Um, let's head into last calls. We're going a little long here. The point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want. The only rule is it's uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. I'm going to go first here because I'm okay if anyone wants to pile on at the end of this. Angel Hernandez is no longer an umpire in Major League Baseball, and all is well. All isn't well, but at least something has been done. Thank you. There might be a baseball Jesus. That's all I want to say.
I don't understand how it took that long.
Fucking union. The umpires union. That's all it was.
I know, but like, come
Mike
on, like
hates unions.
I don't.
You heard it here. Dad, get him.
Like he was making all the other umps look bad. Didn't they all hate him?
Well, like, it's funny. I watched John Boy's little thing about Angel retiring, and his thing about like when Joe West was the most hated umpire before he retired, and then it became Angel. But he's like, but Joe West wasn't hated for being a bad umpire. He was hated for making the game about him, thinking that he was above the game. Angel was just bad.
Joe West has a quote saying how Angel Hernandez was a good umpire. So maybe birds of a feather flock together. Are we still doing last calls? Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay,
I invited everyone to be able to talk about mine.
Well, yeah, because you knew that all of us would have an opinion on it. Because
it's great news.
Oh God!
Now all we got to do is get rid of CB Buckner, and umpiring will be considerably better. Kevin, you want to do a last call?
Oh, sure. Why not? My last call many years ago when I was working at our old brewery, a brewery that Mike and I used to work at. Wink, wink. A game, an internet game came out called Pokemon Go. And I remember when I worked, I had no context for this. I wasn't with it. I didn't understand Pokemon. I didn't grow up with that game at all. I kind of just missed that pocket in my, I didn't have it for a Game Boy Color or what have you. And I remember Jody talking about making that brewery like a Poke Stop and people coming in and catching Pokemon in our area. And seeing people come in and like try to like their phones up and they're like, it was like real live, like augmented reality and catching Pokemon. I thought it was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard of. I didn't understand Pokemon. I didn't like it. I was annoyed by people like trying to catch Pokemon in my brewery. It drove me crazy. Fast forward, I have a 6-year-old who loves Pokemon. I download the Pokemon Go app because I'm like, I can be a good dad. Look, here's a picture of you next to Garchomp. 6 months later, I play this thing every single day. I have a Pokemon Go catcher on my wrist that I charge every night to spin gyms, get Pokeballs, and actually catch Pokemon. This has replaced baseball cards in my life. I love baseball cards. If I could just do nothing but go to shops and get all the different top sets, I still get a full top set every single year. I collect some of the heritage cards because I love the classic ones. I'll do that. I'll do a whole, last call on that sometime in the future. But this has replaced it. I can collect. I can evolve. I'm learning so much. I've gotten to the point where Jad will look at me, my son, and say, Dad, I don't care about this anymore. He still likes to evolve them. I let him evolve all the Pokemon. I let him mega evolve all the Pokemon for the first time, so he gets excited. Anytime I get a new one, I bring it to him. Jad, I got this today at work. I went on a raid and got this Pokemon, and he does get excited. But in all honesty, it's me that's excited. It's really fun. I didn't care at all about this. I thought it was the dumbest thing of all, and I've been converted. It's lame, probably, but it's really, really fun. And so for all you Pokemon Go players out there, I get you and I see you.
Tim.
So by the time this thing airs, they will probably be eliminated from the NBA playoffs. But I do want to just kind of shout out the Minnesota Timberwolves, because it's been 20 years since we've made it this far into the playoffs. And it's a fun team. They play team ball, I think, better than any Timberwolves team that I've ever seen. Karl Anthony Towns is played fairly well this series. He's got his own issues. He's foul prone. Anthony Edwards, though, is a future face of this league, I think. He's funny. I don't know if you saw him telling Charles Barkley to bring your ass to Minnesota. Very much enjoying them, but it's been fun to see. I had season tickets to the Wolves one season, only because I worked at Best Buy and the Wolves were so bad that they offered extreme discounts to like corporate sponsors. So I was able to get an extremely discounted Wolves, not great seats, but not bad. Plus, you could always just go up to a better seat because they have been terrible. And we're not a great sports town, right? The Lynx have been and have won some championships, but other than that, we haven't won a championship since the '91 World Series. Twins are up and down. They, win the AL Central and then immediately get booted. The Vikings win the NFC North and completely get booted this year. The Twins started off terrible, and they won like 10 straight, and then they lost 6 straight, and then they won 6 out of 7. They're all up and down. It's been a very rough time for us. And so it's been fun to see the Timberwolves be as good as they are, and it's been a lot of fun to see all the social media memes and people actually care about the sport of basketball, because I feel like there's like 7 NBA fans in the Midwest in general, and so it's been fun to actually be able to get people that don't even like sports get excited about it. So, like I said, they'll probably be eliminated by the time this airs, but at least they didn't get swept out of the Western Conference Finals, and it's been a fun ride.
Nice. Tim, you want to plug anything?
I have absolutely nothing to plug unless you want to. No, I got nothing.
Kevin?
I've started a new food and beer pairing series at barrelamongst.com and on all of our social media platforms, where I'm going to local restaurants and doing on-site food and beer pairings with our beers, with like incredible menu items. I mean, all over the board, all different kinds of restaurants. So it's a lot of fun. It's something I'm really passionate about. I love beer and food. I came from the wine world where, wine and food is a no-brainer, but people don't appreciate beer and food pairings like they do with wine. So if you're interested in that and you want to follow us on any social media platform, we put up videos, short videos on Instagram and Facebook, and longer, more involved videos on YouTube. Really appreciate a like and a follow on those videos.
Awesome. Follow me at Mike Loves Beer on all of the places. You can, or not all of them, the ones, not TikTok. If you want to follow the show, we're at United We Drink on Twitter. It's Twitter forever. United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. We're also kind of on Blue Sky. I'm just always posting about the stuff there, the episodes there. But man, that's a weird place. It's like the opposite of Twitter, but also kind of the same. It's fucking weird.
I wanted it to be good.
I did too, but like I had some dude always like responding to stuff of mine with like trying to make weird jokes, and like he's a beer dude in the UK, and it was just like I don't know what you're fucking going on, man, but like that finally did it for me. I was just like I can't do this. That's what I just went back to Twitter, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try to make my timeline as best as I can with the shit that I want to see. Like I just want to see the people who I follow about the things that I just want to see beer. I want to see TV. I want to see music. I want to see art and photography and like
there's Nazi propaganda.
like it's just like block, like block so many ads, so many fucking ads from fucking right wing propaganda bullshit.
Pornbot and Newsmax.
I've blocked a lot. I've blocked a lot of left wing stuff too, because you know what? I know where to get my news. I can go to my Google News feed and see the news. I don't want to be on Twitter for that. I just want to fucking talk with people who I have like similar interests in about the things that we do enjoy. And, you know, like having some fun poking at bullshit every now and then is great. But like, yeah, I'm not on that shit to fucking see news. I know where to get the news.
No, I love this IPA, and Bush did 9/11. Like, I think that's how that mostly goes.
Other than that, if you want to support the show financially, which why would you after that, you can head on over to our website, youknowwedrink.com.
With this level of entertainment, who would not want to support us?
9/11 jokes. We'll start sprinkling those into every episode. youknowwedrink.com. Check out our Brands We Love page, which will be 0 eventually, because they don't want us to mention them. You can also check out our web store, youknowwedrink.com/store, to buy shirts, buttons, stickers, totes, and all that other fun stuff. Other than that, we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk about a new topic, which I'll tease here. The environment. Take that for what it's worth. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you then. Cheers.
Cheers.